I'm Ryan Cooper, 32, and I never thought my biggest betrayal would come from my own sister. We grew up sharing everything, but I never expected she'd help herself to $125,000 from my account. When I discovered the theft, I was devastated. What hurt even more was my parents calling me selfish for wanting my money back. Their blind defense of my sister forced my hand into a lawsuit that ultimately destroyed our family. Before I dive into how my own family betrayed me, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against your own family. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. Growing up in Boston, our family seemed perfectly normal from the outside. My parents, Robert and Susan Cooper, provided a comfortable middle-class life for me and my younger sister Allison. We lived in a modest suburban home, took annual vacations to Cape Cod, and celebrated holidays with extended family. On the surface, everything looked picture-perfect. But beneath that veneer, there was always an imbalance I couldn't quite articulate as a child. Allison, 3 years younger than me, seemed to operate under a different set of rules. When we were kids, her broken curfews were met with gentle reminders, while my 5-minute tardiness earned lengthy lectures. When she crashed our dad's car at 16, they bought her a new one. When I needed a vehicle for college, I worked 2 jobs to afford a used Honda. Allison is more sensitive, my mother would explain. She needs more support. This became the family mantra, a justification for the obvious favoritism that followed us into adulthood. Despite this, I loved my sister. We shared inside jokes, defended each other at school, and I genuinely wanted to see her succeed. Our relationship was complicated but real. I never resented her for our parents' behavior, that wasn't her fault. But as we grew older, patterns emerged that should have warned me about what was coming. After high school, I took out student loans and worked throughout college, graduating with a computer science degree. I started at entry-level positions, lived with 3 roommates in a cramped apartment, and saved every dollar I could. Meanwhile, Allison dropped out of 3 different colleges, with our parents covering the tuition each time. When she decided college wasn't her path, they funded her first apartment, her car payments, and even her attempt at starting a boutique clothing store that closed within 8 months. Your sister is finding herself, my father would say whenever I questioned these decisions. Not everyone knows exactly what they want like you do, Ryan. By 30, my hard work had paid off. I joined a promising tech startup in its early stages, worked 80-hour weeks helping build their security software, and when the company was acquired last year, I received a $500,000 payout for my equity. I'd already saved considerably before this windfall, making smart investments and living below my means. Financial security had always been my goal. Growing up watching my parents stretch their credit cards to cover Allison's mistakes had taught me the importance of self-reliance. Allison's life took a different trajectory. By 29, she had cycled through 6 different jobs, none lasting more than a year. Her boutique failure was followed by an attempt at interior design, then social media marketing, then event planning. Each venture began with enthusiasm and ended with excuses. Our parents financially supported every new passion, depleting their retirement savings in the process. Last spring, things came to a head for Allison. Her fiancé Marcus discovered she had secretly maxed out their joint credit cards to the tune of $30,000. He broke off their engagement, and she moved back into our parents' home, devastated and debt-ridden. I felt genuinely sorry for her. Despite our differences, seeing her heartbroken was difficult. When I visited that Easter, I found my parents' home tense with unspoken financial stress. Mom looked tired, Dad seemed defeated, and Allison barely left her room. Over dinner, the conversation inevitably turned to money. The wedding deposits were non-refundable. My mother sighed. And Allison's landlord is keeping her security deposit because she left before the lease ended. I could see where this was heading. Dad mentioned their property taxes had increased, and Mom talked about postponing their long-planned retirement cruise. They never directly asked for money, but the implication hung in the air. I can help with some of Allison's immediate expenses, I offered, writing a check for $5,000 before I left. This should cover the credit card minimum payments until she gets back on her feet. Allison hugged me tearfully, promising to pay me back. My parents beamed with pride at my generosity, as if I'd finally fulfilled my role as the successful sibling. Over the next few months, I tried to help Allison in practical ways. I sent her job listings, offered to review her resume, and even introduced her to some industry contacts. She politely declined every suggestion, saying she wasn't in the right headspace yet. When I offered financial advice about tackling her debt, she accused me of being condescending. Not everyone can be perfect with money like you, Ryan, she snapped during one phone call. Some of us have actual feelings to deal with. Still trying to be supportive, I paid for a family vacation to Florida that summer, thinking it might lift everyone's spirits. We spent a week at a beachfront resort, and for brief moments, it felt like old times. Allison seemed happier, taking countless photos for her Instagram and talking about starting a travel blog. My parents relaxed for the first time in months. During that trip, I remember leaving my phone on the table while swimming with Dad. Allison and Mom stayed behind, saying they wanted to relax in the shade. I thought nothing of it at the time. Why would I? These were the people I trusted most in the world. If only I'd known what was happening right under my nose. 3 months after our family vacation, on a rainy Tuesday morning in October, I sat down with my coffee to review my monthly finances. This was a routine for me, reconciling accounts, updating my budget spreadsheet, checking investment performances. Financial discipline had become second nature, a habit that had served me well. I logged into my main savings account first, expecting to see the usual growth from my automatic deposits and modest interest. Instead, I blinked at the screen in confusion. The balance was significantly lower than it should have been. I initially thought I must have made an error in my tracking spreadsheet or forgotten about a large purchase. I scrolled through the recent transactions, and my stomach dropped. There were multiple withdrawals I didn't recognize, $15,000 here, $20,000 there, varying amounts spaced out over the past 3 months. They totaled exactly $125,000. This can't be right, I muttered to myself, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. I hadn't authorized these transfers. I hadn't even noticed them until now because this particular account wasn't one I accessed frequently. It was my long-term savings that I rarely touched. With shaking hands, I called the bank's fraud department. After verifying my identity, I explained the situation to the representative. I'm seeing several large transfers from your account, the bank representative confirmed. They appear to have been authorized through your online banking app. That's impossible, I insisted. I didn't make those transfers. According to our records, they were initiated from your registered device using your credentials, she explained patiently. The funds were transferred to an account under the name of Allison Cooper. Is this someone you know? The world seemed to tilt sideways. Allison? My sister? There had to be some mistake. That's my sister, I said numbly. But I never authorized any transfers to her. The representative walked me through the details of each transaction. The first transfer occurred exactly 1 week after our family vacation in Florida. The most recent was just 3 days ago. They were all initiated from my smartphone, using my login credentials and passing the 2-factor authentication. After placing a freeze on my account and filing a formal fraud report, I hung up and sat in stunned silence. How could Allison have accessed my accounts? Then, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place, memories surfaced. My phone left unattended during that swim in Florida. The banking app one rarely logged out of. The text verification codes I sometimes didn't notice among other messages. I searched my email and found password reset notifications I'd overlooked, buried among promotional emails. Looking at the timestamps, they coincided with family gatherings. Times when my phone would have been accessible to Allison. Still in disbelief, I began searching social media for evidence of where my money might have gone. It didn't take long to find answers. Allison's Instagram, which had been relatively quiet before, was now filled with photos of a brand new BMW convertible. New beginnings deserve new rides. #blessed, read the caption from 2 months ago. There were pictures of her wearing designer clothes I recognized from high-end brands, a Rolex watch prominently displayed in selfies, and most recently, photos from a luxury resort in Bali. Sometimes you just need to treat yourself. #selfcare #deserved. She had written alongside images of an overwater bungalow that I knew cost thousands per night. My blood ran cold as I calculated the timing. Each extravagant purchase aligned perfectly with the withdrawals from my account. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a bank error. My own sister had systematically stolen $125,000 from me while our parents welcomed her back into their home, while I paid for our family vacation, while I offered her financial advice. I discovered she had booked a 3-week European tour scheduled to begin next month. First-class flights, 5-star hotels, private tours, all detailed in confirmation emails she had accidentally shared to a family cloud storage we rarely used. The trip would easily cost another $30,000. The betrayal was methodical. Calculated. She hadn't impulsively taken money once out of desperation. She had repeatedly stolen from me over months, funding a lavish lifestyle while pretending to be broke, while accepting my help and sympathy. Worst of all, she knew exactly what this money meant to me. We had talked about my savings goals during family dinners. She knew I was planning to buy my first house next year. She knew I had worked endless hours for years to build that financial security. I tried calling Allison immediately, but she didn't answer. I sent a text. "We need to talk about the money you took from my account. Call me now." No response. I called my parents' house, and Mom answered cheerfully. "Ryan! What a nice surprise. We were just talking about you at breakfast. Is Allison there?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "She's out shopping with her friends," Mom replied. "She's been in such better spirits lately. I think she's finally moving past that awful breakup." "I bet she is," I thought bitterly. "Mom, I need all of you to be home tomorrow. I'm driving up. We need to have a family meeting." "Is everything okay?" she asked, concern creeping into her voice. "No," I said truthfully. "Everything is not okay. I'll see you tomorrow." That night was the longest of my life. I barely slept, alternating between rage, hurt, and disbelief. How could my own sister do this to me? What would make her think this was acceptable? And how would my parents react when they learned the truth? By morning, one emotion had crystallized from the chaos: determination. I gathered all the evidence: bank statements, transfer records, screenshots of Allison's extravagant purchases, timestamps of account access. I organized everything into a folder, made copies, and prepared myself for the confrontation that would forever change our family. As I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house the next day, I kept asking myself one question: was I ready to lose my family over this? Because something told me that's exactly what was about to happen. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had been a tradition for as long as I could remember. The familiar scent of my mother's pot roast filled the air as I pulled into the driveway, but today it brought no comfort. My folder of evidence sat on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. I took a deep breath, grabbed it, and walked to the front door. I didn't bother knocking. The sound of laughter guided me to the dining room, where I found my family already seated around the table. My father was carving the roast, my mother arranging vegetables on plates, and Allison was animatedly describing something on her phone. "Ryan!" Mom exclaimed. "You're just in time. I've set your place." Their normalcy in the face of what I knew felt surreal, almost offensive. Allison looked up, and for a split second, I caught a flicker of something in her eyes: recognition, perhaps fear, before she masked it with a smile. "Hey, big brother," she said casually. "Long time no see." I set my folder on the table and took my seat, declining my mother's offer of wine. "I need to keep a clear head for this conversation," I said. Dad paused his carving. Sounds serious. Everything okay at work? Work is fine, I replied, maintaining eye contact with Allison across the table. But I discovered something interesting when I checked my accounts this week. Allison suddenly became very interested in rearranging her napkin. My mother, oblivious to the tension, continued serving food. My savings account is missing $125,000, I continued. Transferred out over the past 3 months in multiple withdrawals. My father frowned. You think you've been hacked? That's terrible, son. Have you called the bank? I have. I nodded. They told me something fascinating. The money was transferred to an account belonging to Allison Cooper. The clatter of my mother dropping a serving spoon broke the silence that followed. Allison's face had drained of color. There must be some mistake. My mother stammered, looking between us. No mistake, I said, opening my folder and laying out the bank statements. Here are the transfer records. 15 withdrawals, totaling exactly $125,000. All going directly to Allison's account. My father picked up the statements, his expression darkening as he reviewed them. My mother hovered over his shoulder, her hand covering her mouth. Allison? Dad finally asked. What is this about? Allison's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. She stood abruptly, mumbling something about needing the bathroom, but I blocked her path. Sit down, I said firmly. You've had 3 months to spend my money. You can give me 10 minutes to explain yourself. She sank back into her chair, tears already forming. Classic Allison, tears had always been her first line of defense. I don't know what you're talking about, she tried weakly. I pulled out my phone and opened her Instagram profile. New BMW. Designer clothes. Luxury vacations. Rolex watch. European tour booked for next month. Where did you get the money for all this, Allison? Because according to your LinkedIn, you're still unemployed. My mother gasped at the images. My father's face had turned to stone. I was going to pay it back. Allison finally whispered, the denial crumbling. It was just a loan. A loan? I repeated incredulously. Loans are agreed upon by both parties. You stole from me. You accessed my accounts without permission. That's theft, Allison. It's a crime. I needed it. She suddenly burst out. You have no idea what my life has been like. Marcus left me with nothing. I was depressed. I needed a fresh start. So you stole from your brother? My father asked, his voice uncharacteristically hard. Here was the moment of truth. I waited for my parents to express the appropriate outrage, to demand Allison return the money immediately, to side with basic decency and family loyalty. Instead, my mother reached for Allison's hand. Honey, she said gently, you should have told us you were in such a desperate place. We could have helped you find another way. I stared at her in disbelief. Another way? Mom, she stole $125,000 from me. There is no another way to justify that. My father cleared his throat. Ryan, obviously what Allison did was wrong. But you have to understand, she's been through a terrible time. The breakup, losing her apartment, her depression. And that justifies theft? I demanded. Of course not, he said, but his tone suggested otherwise. But you're doing very well financially. This money, it's not going to make or break you, is it? Whereas Allison needed a fresh start. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So because I worked hard and saved money, it's okay for her to steal from me? Would you be saying this if she robbed a bank? Or a stranger? Why is it different because she's family and I'm successful? Allison was fully crying now, my mother rubbing her back soothingly. I was going to pay you back, Allison insisted between sobs. Once I got back on my feet. With what money? I asked. You've been unemployed for a year. You've spent most of what you took already. Were you planning to magically get a 6-figure job next month? Ryan, there's no need to be cruel, my mother admonished. Can't you see she feels terrible? She feels terrible because she got caught, I corrected. If she felt terrible about stealing, she would have stopped after the first transfer. Not taken more money 15 separate times. My father sighed deeply. Look, son, what's done is done. Perhaps we can work out a family loan arrangement. Allison can pay you back over time. I already spent most of it, Allison admitted quietly. The car, the trips, the clothes. I needed them for my mental health. I was in such a dark place. Your mental health? I repeated, incredulous. You know what's bad for mental health? Having $125,000 stolen by someone you trusted. Having your family defend the thief instead of you. Now you're just being selfish, my father said, his voice rising. Family supports each other through hard times. Allison made a mistake. A mistake? I cut him off. A mistake is a one-time error in judgment. She systematically stole from me 15 times over 3 months. She used our family gatherings to access my phone. She specifically waited until I had received my company payout. This was premeditated, calculated theft. Ryan, please, my mother pleaded. Blood is thicker than money. We can work this out without making it worse. Making it worse? I laughed bitterly. I'm not the one who made this situation. Allison did that all by herself. So what do you want? My father demanded. To destroy your sister's life over money you can afford to lose? Is that really the kind of brother you want to be? I looked at them. Really looked at them, and suddenly saw with perfect clarity what was happening. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was the culmination of a lifetime of different standards, different rules, different expectations. In their eyes, I would always be the one expected to sacrifice, to understand, to forgive, while Allison would always be the one entitled to take, to be forgiven, to be protected from consequences. I want my money back, I said firmly. All of it. Immediately. I can't, Allison whispered. I don't have it. Then sell the car. Cancel the European trip. Return the designer clothes. Sell the watch. Whatever it takes. That's not fair, she protested. Those things are mine now. They were purchased with stolen money, I reminded her. They were never yours. My father stood up, his face flushed with anger. Ryan, you need to let this go. Right now. Or you're going to cause a permanent rift in this family that can never be repaired. I stood as well, gathering my evidence back into the folder. I'm not the one who caused this rift. But I want to be very clear about what happens next. Allison has exactly 1 week to return my money in full. After that, I'm pressing charges and filing a lawsuit. You would sue your own sister? My mother gasped. Apparently, my own sister would steal $125,000 from me, I replied. So yes, I would absolutely sue her. Get out, my father said, pointing to the door. If money means more to you than family, then get out of this house. I looked at each of them one last time, my father's rage, my mother's tears, Allison's calculated victimhood, and walked out without another word. As I drove away, I realized I had my answer. Yes, I was ready to lose my family over this. Because the family I thought I had never really existed in the first place. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of anger and disbelief. Rain pounded against my windshield, matching the storm raging inside me. By the time I arrived home, my phone was flooded with texts and missed calls from my parents, but nothing from Allison. Typical. I poured myself a stiff drink and called the one person I knew would give me honest advice, my college roommate James, now a practicing attorney. They defended her? James asked incredulously after I recounted the confrontation. Even with all the evidence? Not only defended her, I said, but made me out to be the villain for wanting my money back. My dad actually threw me out of the house. James let out a low whistle. That's messed up, man. So what are you thinking? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to press criminal charges. Another part is saying to just cut my losses and cut them all out of my life. Let's look at your options, James said, shifting into lawyer mode. Criminal charges would mean police involvement, a potential trial, media attention if it gets picked up. Your sister could face jail time depending on how it's charged. The thought of Allison in handcuffs gave me no satisfaction. Despite everything, I didn't want to see her in prison. I just wanted my money back and for her to understand the gravity of what she'd done. What about civil action? I asked. A civil lawsuit is more straightforward for financial recovery, James explained. You have solid evidence of the transfers and can prove they were unauthorized. The court would likely rule in your favor and order her to repay the full amount plus legal fees. She claims she can't pay it back, I said. She's already spent most of it. The court can establish a judgment that includes asset seizure, wage garnishment, whatever it takes, James replied. It might take time, but you'd eventually recover the funds. Plus, it creates a legal record of the theft without necessarily putting her in jail. Over the next few days, I weighed my options carefully. My parents continued their campaign of guilt, alternating between angry accusations and tearful pleas. Extended family members began calling. Apparently, my parents had shared their version of events, casting me as the heartless brother persecuting poor, fragile Allison. My cousin Michael called with a different perspective. I heard what happened from your mom, he said, but I wanted to hear your side. After I explained, he surprised me. I believe you. Allison's been pulling this kind of stuff forever, just never at this scale. Remember when she borrowed my gaming console in high school and sold it? His support meant more than I could express. What would you do? I asked him. Honestly? I'd sue. Not just for the money, but because she needs to learn there are consequences. Your parents have been protecting her from reality her whole life. Maybe this is the wake-up call she needs. By the 5th day, I'd made my decision. I called James again. I want to file a civil lawsuit. Can you represent me or recommend someone who can? James connected me with a colleague specializing in financial fraud cases. We gathered all the evidence: bank statements, transfer records, timestamps from my phone showing when the banking app was accessed, screenshots of Allison's social media showing her purchases, even text messages where she had previously asked me for loans, proving she knew the proper channel for requesting money. The attorney was confident. This is as clear-cut as these cases get. The transfers were unauthorized, the money trail is obvious, and her spending spree creates a timeline that matches perfectly with the theft. 1 week after the family confrontation, with no repayment or even acknowledgement from Allison, we filed the lawsuit. I instructed the process server to be respectful but firm when delivering the papers to my sister. The reaction was swift and furious. My phone exploded with calls and texts within hours of Allison being served. How could you do this to your sister? My father's text read in all caps. My mother left a voicemail, sobbing about how I was tearing the family apart and pushing Allison back into depression. Allison herself finally broke her silence with a single text. I thought you loved me. I guess money matters more to you than family. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. The extended family civil war escalated. Aunts, uncles, and cousins took sides. My mother's sister called to berate me for being materialistic. My father's brother, a financial advisor, surprised me by offering his support. If anyone in this family understands the violation of what she did, it's me. What shocked me most was the social media fallout. Allison had apparently crafted a carefully edited version of events, posting a tearful video about how her wealthy brother was destroying her life over a family loan during her darkest time. She conveniently omitted the part about taking the money without permission, the luxury purchases, or the 15 separate transfers. Friends who didn't know the full story sent me concerned messages. Some distanced themselves, not wanting to be involved in family drama. Others asked pointed questions that revealed they'd only heard Allison's fabricated version. 2 weeks before the court date, I received a settlement offer through Allison's hastily hired attorney. She offered to repay $50,000 over 5 years, less than half of what she'd taken, if I would drop the lawsuit immediately. This is insulting, my attorney said when I forwarded the offer. They're not taking this seriously. I agreed and rejected it without countering. The pressure from family intensified. My Uncle Joseph, whom I'd always respected, came to my apartment to mediate. Ryan, I understand you're hurt, he said carefully. But lawsuits between family members rarely end well for anyone. Perhaps there's a middle ground. Would you be looking for middle ground if someone stole $125,000 from you? I asked him directly. He hesitated. Well, no, but… Then why should I? I countered. Everyone keeps talking about family, but where was this concern for family when Allison was stealing from me? Where was this concern when my parents took her side? Why am I the only one expected to sacrifice in the name of family? He had no answer for that. The night before the court date, I received one final call from my father. This is your last chance to stop this madness, he said, his voice tight with anger. Your mother can barely sleep. Is that what you want? What I want is my money back, I said tiredly. What I want is for Allison to face consequences for once in her life. What I want is for you and Mom to recognize that what she did was wrong. She made a mistake, he insisted. No, Dad. A mistake is accidental. What Allison did was deliberate, repeated theft. And your reaction has shown me exactly where I stand in this family. So that's it? You're choosing money over your family? No, I corrected him. I'm choosing self-respect and boundaries. Allison chose money over family when she stole from me. You and Mom chose Allison over me when you defended her. I'm just refusing to be the victim in this story. I hung up and turned off my phone, needing a clear head for court the next day. As I laid awake that night, I realized something important. Regardless of the court's decision, I had already lost my family. The only question remaining was whether I would also lose my self-respect by allowing them to manipulate me one last time. I decided I wouldn't. The county courthouse was imposing in the morning light, its stone columns and broad steps a physical manifestation of the gravity I felt. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, my attorney beside me reviewing last-minute details. We were waiting in the corridor when I saw them arrive, my parents flanking Allison protectively, followed by her attorney, a nervous-looking man with a rumpled suit. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed from crying. My father's jaw was set in a rigid line of disapproval. Allison looked pale but composed, dressed conservatively in a blouse and modest skirt, a stark contrast to the designer outfits she'd been flaunting on Instagram. Ryan, my mother attempted, stepping toward me, but my attorney smoothly intercepted. Mrs. Cooper, all communication should go through counsel at this point, he said politely but firmly. We maintained an uncomfortable distance until an unexpected arrival broke the tension. My cousin Michael approached with his wife, then my Uncle Robert, and to my surprise, my grandmother Martha, my father's mother. We're here for Ryan, Michael told my parents simply. My father's face registered shock. Mom? What are you doing here? My grandmother, 82 and formidable despite her small stature, fixed him with a stern look. Robert Cooper, I raised you better than to defend a thief, family or not. I'm here to support the person who was wronged. Before my father could respond, the bailiff called our case, and we filed into the courtroom. The proceedings began with opening statements. My attorney presented a clear, factual account of the unauthorized transfers, the timeline of theft, and the subsequent spending spree. Allison's attorney attempted to frame the situation as a misunderstanding between siblings, and emphasized Allison's emotional state following her broken engagement. When the evidence presentation began, the judge's expression grew increasingly severe. Bank records showed the systematic nature of the transfers. My phone records demonstrated I was nowhere near my device when many of the transactions occurred. Screenshots of Allison's social media documented her luxury purchases coinciding precisely with the stolen funds. Your Honor, my attorney said, these were not impulsive acts of desperation. Ms. Cooper accessed her brother's accounts 15 separate times over 3 months, specifically targeting his savings after he received a company acquisition payout. She then used these funds for luxury items, a BMW convertible, designer clothing, a Rolex watch, international vacations, while claiming financial hardship to family members, including Mr. Cooper himself, who had previously offered legitimate financial assistance. When Allison took the stand, her testimony was a masterclass in evasion and emotional manipulation. She spoke of her depression, her anxiety, her feelings of worthlessness after her engagement ended. She admitted to the transfers but insisted they were loans she intended to repay. When she got back on her feet, "If these were loans," the judge interrupted, "do you have any documentation of the agreement? Text messages discussing terms? Emails? Anything written?" "No, Your Honor," she admitted. "It was implied." "Implied how, exactly?" "Ryan has always helped me financially. He knows I've struggled. As my brother, he would want me to be happy." The judge's expression made it clear how weak this sounded. The turning point came when my attorney presented evidence we'd discovered during discovery. Text messages Allison had sent to a friend just after the first large transfer. "OMG, I actually did it," the text read. "Transferred $20,000 from Ryan's account today. He'll never notice, he has so much money now. Going car shopping tomorrow." Another text sent weeks later. "Got another $25,000 today. This is too easy. His password is literally our childhood dog's name plus his birthday. So predictable." And finally, the most damning, sent after I had discovered the theft. "Ryan found out about the money. Playing the victim card with Mom and Dad. They'll take my side like always. He won't actually sue his own sister, lol." Allison's face crumbled as these messages were read aloud. Her attorney attempted to object, but the judge overruled him. My parents looked stunned, as if finally confronting the reality of what their daughter had done. The bank's security expert testified about the access patterns, confirming that the transfers occurred during family gatherings when I would have been separated from my phone. He presented footage from a bank ATM showing Allison withdrawing cash minutes after one of the online transfers, cash that would be harder to trace. When the evidence phase concluded, the judge called a brief recess. In the hallway, I caught my mother's eye. She looked away quickly, but not before I saw something I hadn't expected: doubt. Upon reconvening, the judge delivered her ruling with clear conviction. "The evidence in this case is overwhelming," she began. "Ms. Cooper engaged in a systematic, premeditated theft from her own brother, exploiting family trust and access to obtain unauthorized transfers totaling $125,000. Her subsequent spending of these funds on luxury items while claiming hardship demonstrates both awareness of wrongdoing and a concerning lack of remorse." Allison began to cry softly, but the judge continued. "The court orders Ms. Allison Cooper to repay the full amount of $125,000, plus interest at the standard rate of 8% from the date of the first unauthorized transfer. Additionally, all legal fees incurred by the plaintiff will be paid by the defendant." She then addressed Allison directly. "Ms. Cooper, you should consider yourself fortunate that your brother chose civil rather than criminal proceedings. What you did constitutes felony theft in this state, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. I strongly suggest you reflect on your actions and the family relationships you've damaged." Finally, she turned to my parents, who had been permitted to sit behind Allison, and to the family members present. Enabling such behavior does not constitute love or support. It perpetuates harm to both the victim and, ultimately, to Ms. Cooper herself, who has been shielded from the natural consequences of her actions. With a bang of her gavel, it was over. We had won completely. In the aftermath, the courtroom became a tableau of raw emotion. Allison collapsed in sobs, my mother rushing to comfort her. My father stood frozen, his expression unreadable. My grandmother approached me, squeezing my hand wordlessly, her support more meaningful than any victory. As we left the courthouse, Allison's attorney approached mine. My client would like to discuss payment arrangements. We'll be in touch, my attorney replied coolly. Outside on the courthouse steps, my father finally confronted me. Are you satisfied now? He demanded, his voice breaking. You've humiliated your sister in public. Destroyed her credit. Possibly her future. Dad, I said quietly, Allison destroyed her own future when she decided to steal from me. All I did was refuse to be her victim. She'll have to sell her car, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. Move back home. It will take years to pay this off. Yes, I agreed. Actions have consequences. That's how the world works for everyone else. My mother approached, her earlier certainty replaced with conflicted anguish. Those text messages, did you know about them before today? Yes, I admitted. My attorney discovered them during case preparation. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, her voice small. Would you have believed me if I had? I challenged. Or would you have accused me of fabricating them to hurt Allison? Her silence was answer enough. In the weeks that followed, the judgment began to take effect. Allison's BMW was repossessed and sold to partially satisfy the debt. Her European vacation was cancelled, the deposits forfeited. A payment plan was established for the remaining balance, secured by wage garnishment from any future employment. My parents, facing the undeniable evidence of Allison's calculated theft, made a last desperate attempt to make it all go away. My father called to offer to pay the judgment himself if I would forgive and forget. This isn't about the money anymore, Dad, I told him. This is about accountability. Allison needs to pay her own debt. She's your sister, he insisted. Family forgives. Forgiveness requires genuine remorse, I countered. Has Allison actually apologized? Not for getting caught, but for deliberately stealing from me 15 times? For lying about it? For trying to manipulate everyone against me? His silence spoke volumes. The money would eventually be repaid, but something far more valuable had been lost in that courtroom. The facade of family that had sustained us for decades had finally shattered, revealing the truth underneath. And while the victory felt hollow in many ways, it also felt necessary, like lancing a wound that had been festering my entire life. Some battles are worth fighting, even when victory feels like loss. The weeks following the court case unfolded like the aftermath of a natural disaster. The landscape of my life fundamentally altered, familiar landmarks gone, and the slow, painful process of assessment beginning. My phone became a battleground of competing narratives and emotional manipulation. My mother called daily, her messages evolving from anger to bargaining to tearful pleas. Ryan, please, we need to find a way to move forward as a family, she would say. Allison is struggling terribly with the judgment. She's talking about moving out of state to start over. Is that what you want? To lose your sister forever? My father's approach was more direct. You've made your point, he texted. You won your case. But actions have consequences beyond legal judgments. Think about what you're doing to this family. The irony of his statement, echoing almost exactly what I had said to him about Allison's theft, seemed entirely lost on him. Extended family members chose sides. Holiday invitations were rescinded. Group chats fell silent when I joined. My Aunt Martha, my mother's sister, called to inform me I was no longer welcome at her annual Christmas party. We don't need your negativity ruining the holidays, she said. Allison is going through enough. Through it all, the small circle of family who had supported me remained steadfast. My grandmother called weekly to check on me. My cousin Michael and his wife invited me for dinner regularly. My Uncle Robert, my father's brother, provided perspective I desperately needed. Your parents have always had a blind spot where Allison is concerned, he told me during a fishing trip organized to get me out of my apartment. It's not new, and it's not your fault. They convinced themselves that protecting her from consequences was love. It wasn't. 3 weeks after the court case, I received a text from Allison that simply read, "Can we talk? Just us." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop halfway between our homes. She looked different when she arrived, subdued, without the designer clothes and flashy accessories that had become her signature on social media. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps the experience had changed something fundamental in her. I wanted to say I'm sorry. She began after ordering a simple black coffee. What I did was wrong. Thank you for acknowledging that, I said cautiously. The thing is, she continued, stirring her coffee endlessly, I was in such a dark place after Marcus left. You've always had everything together, the great job, the savings, the perfect life. I just wanted to feel good about myself for once. And there it was. Not an apology, but a justification. Not accountability, but another attempt to cast herself as the victim and me as the villain. Allison, I said quietly, did you ever consider that my perfect life came from years of hard work? From sacrifices? From being responsible with money even when it was difficult? That's easy for you to say, she countered, a familiar defensiveness creeping into her voice. You've always been the golden child. The smart one. The responsible one. Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow? Having parents constantly compare you to your successful brother? I stared at her, truly seeing the alternate reality she had constructed for herself. In her world, I was the favored child, not her. I was the one who had been given advantages, not her. My success was a burden to her, not an inspiration. This meeting was a mistake, I said, standing up. You're not sorry you stole from me. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences. But you still think you were entitled to my money because your life is hard and mine is supposedly easy. That's not what I meant, she protested, but her eyes told a different story. Until you can take genuine responsibility for your actions, not just the theft, but the lies, the manipulation, trying to turn the family against me, there's nothing left to discuss between us. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The sister I thought I had, the one I had protected on the playground, helped with homework, defended to friends, had never really existed. Or perhaps she had, but somewhere along the way, she had been replaced by someone I no longer recognized. 2 months after the court case, I made a decision that surprised even me. I accepted a job offer in Seattle, 3,000 miles away from Boston and the family drama that had consumed my life. The opportunity had come through a former colleague, and the timing couldn't have been better. When I told my parents about the move, my mother broke down entirely. So that's it? You're just abandoning your family? Running away? I'm not running away. I corrected her. I'm moving towards something better. A fresh start. Isn't that what you said Allison deserved? My father, ever practical even in his disappointment, asked about the logistics of Allison's payment plan if I moved across the country. The judgment follows her regardless of where I live. I explained. This isn't about the money anymore, Dad. It never really was. The day before my flight to Seattle, my parents made one last attempt at reconciliation. They arrived at my half-packed apartment unannounced, bringing Allison with them. We can't let you leave with things like this between us. My mother insisted, tears already forming. My father nodded solemnly. Family is forever, son. Whatever has happened, we need to find a way forward. I looked at the three of them standing in my living room, my mother's pleading expression, my father's stern expectation of compliance, and Allison's carefully constructed mask of contrition, and felt nothing but exhaustion. I appreciate you coming, I said, maintaining a polite distance. But reconciliation requires more than just wanting things to go back to normal. It requires acknowledgement of harm, genuine remorse, and changed behavior. I said I was sorry. Allison interjected. You said the words? I agreed. But then you followed them with excuses and blamed me for your choices. That's not an apology. What do you want from us? My father demanded, frustration breaking through. To grovel? To never forgive Allison? To punish her forever? I want what I've always wanted, I said simply. respect, accountability, fairness. The same standards applied to everyone in this family. My mother stepped forward. We love you, Ryan. We've always loved you. I know you believe that, I replied gently. But love without respect isn't enough. Love that demands I accept betrayal and gaslighting isn't love at all. They left without the reconciliation they sought, and I finished packing with a strange mixture of grief and liberation. The family I was leaving behind was not the family I had thought I had for 32 years. But perhaps the family I might build for myself in the future, friends, chosen connections, relationships based on mutual respect, would be stronger for the lessons I had learned. As my plane took off the next day, I watched Boston shrink beneath me, not knowing if or when I would return. What I did know was that for the first time in months, I was moving towards something rather than away from something. And that felt like progress. Seattle welcomed me with its characteristic rain and surprising warmth. The tech company that hired me provided temporary housing while I searched for a permanent place, and I found myself drawn to a modern apartment in Capitol Hill with floor-to-ceiling windows and security features that gave me peace of mind. After what happened with Allison, I had become almost obsessive about digital and financial security. Two-factor authentication on everything, regular credit monitoring, and a password manager with randomly generated credentials. My new position as Director of Security Development came with increased responsibility and a significant salary bump. The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister's theft had made me hyper-aware of security vulnerabilities, essentially advancing my career in cybersecurity. Sometimes the most painful experiences yield unexpected growth. During my first 6 months in Seattle, news from home came through my small circle of trusted family members. My grandmother called weekly with updates, careful to keep the conversation focused on facts rather than emotional manipulation. Allison sold her remaining designer items through some consignment shop, she reported during one call. The money went directly to the repayment account. Your parents helped her find a job at your father's friend's insurance company. Administrative work, nothing glamorous. I appreciated her candor and lack of pressure. She never pushed me to reconnect with my parents or forgive Allison. She simply kept me informed and reminded me I was loved. Your grandfather would have been proud of you, she told me once. He never believed in protecting people from the natural consequences of their actions. He always said that was how character was built. My first Thanksgiving in Seattle was spent with colleagues who had become friends, people who knew me only as I was now, not as the family dynamics had defined me. We gathered in my new apartment, everyone bringing a dish, and the simplicity of shared food and genuine laughter felt like a revelation. No undercurrents of favoritism, no walking on eggshells, no family mythology to maintain. Christmas brought the expected wave of emotion. My parents sent gifts that I returned unopened, along with a polite but firm note explaining that material exchanges wouldn't resolve our fundamental issues. Allison didn't reach out at all. My cousin Michael and his wife video called me on Christmas morning, and my grandmother sent homemade cookies that tasted like childhood, the good parts one still wanted to remember. By spring, I had established a new rhythm to my life. Regular therapy sessions helped me process the betrayal and examine the family patterns that had led to it. I joined a recreational soccer league, took weekend hiking trips to explore the Pacific Northwest, and even started dating again. Something that had seemed impossible in the emotional aftermath of the lawsuit. The repayment plan was proceeding as ordered. My attorney provided monthly updates showing Allison's regular payments, not substantial, but consistent. According to my grandmother, she was still living with my parents, her BMW replaced by a used Honda not unlike the one I had bought myself in college. There was a certain circular justice to that. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, nearly a year after the court case, I was browsing a farmer's market in Pike Place when I heard a familiar voice that stopped me cold. Ryan? I turned to find Allison standing a few feet away, clutching a reusable shopping bag and looking as shocked as I felt. My first instinct was to walk away, but curiosity won out. Allison, what are you doing in Seattle? I'm here for a friend's wedding, she explained, shifting uncomfortably. I had no idea you shopped here. I live nearby, I said, keeping my tone neutral. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with a year's worth of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. You look good, she finally offered. The West Coast suits you. It does, I agreed. How are Mom and Dad? They're okay. Dad's talking about retirement next year. Mom's garden won the Neighborhood Association award again. She paused, then added, They miss you. I nodded but didn't take the bait. And you? The insurance job working out? A flash of surprise crossed her face. She hadn't expected me to know about her employment. It's fine. Not exciting, but it pays the bills. Or some of them, anyway. There was a hint of the old Allison in that last comment, the subtle victim positioning, the implication that her financial situation was unfair. But something had changed in me. I no longer felt responsible for her feelings or obligated to ease her discomfort. That's good to hear, I said simply. She glanced around, then asked, Do you have time for coffee? Just to catch up? I considered the invitation. A year ago, this unexpected meeting would have thrown me into emotional turmoil. Now, I felt a surprising steadiness. I don't think that's a good idea, Allison. I wish you well, but I'm still working through everything that happened. Her expression hardened slightly. So you're never going to forgive me? Is that it? Forgiveness isn't the issue, I explained calmly. Trust is. And trust, once broken, isn't easily rebuilt. Especially when I haven't seen evidence of genuine change. I've been making the payments, she protested. Every month, on time. Because a court ordered you to. I pointed out. That's compliance, not character growth. She flushed, and I could see the familiar pattern trying to reassert itself. The defensive posture, the gathering tears, the preparation for emotional manipulation. But this time, I simply wasn't available for the performance. Take care, Allison, I said, stepping back. I hope the wedding is nice. I walked away before she could respond, feeling neither triumph nor pain, just a quiet certainty that I was protecting my peace. That brief encounter crystallized everything I had learned over the past year. Trust requires actions, not blood relations or tearful promises. Boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary for healthy relationships. Enabling behavior might feel like love in the moment, but it ultimately harms everyone involved. And perhaps most importantly, financial vigilance isn't paranoia, it's self-respect. As the months passed, I found myself mentoring younger colleagues on both financial security and personal boundaries. My experience had given me insights that proved valuable to others navigating family pressures or financial vulnerabilities. I created a financial education workshop that my company eventually adopted as part of its employee wellness program. I began dating Rebecca, a pediatric surgeon with her own complicated family history. Our shared understanding of family dynamics created a foundation of empathy and clear communication. When I finally told her the full story of Allison's theft and the family fallout, her response was refreshingly straightforward. Sometimes the family you choose is more valuable than the one you're born into, she said, squeezing my hand. You did the right thing standing up for yourself. 2 years after moving to Seattle, I received a letter from my father. Unlike the emotional appeals of earlier communications, this one was thoughtful and reflective. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, he wrote. While I still wish things had unfolded differently, I can see now that we failed both you and Allison in many ways. We thought we were protecting her, but we were actually preventing her from becoming the person she needed to be. And in the process, we hurt you repeatedly. I cannot change the past, but I want you to know that I understand better now. If you're ever ready to talk again, I'll be here. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. I kept the letter but didn't respond immediately. Healing has its own timeline, and I was learning to honor mine. The full $125,000 was finally repaid 3 years after the court judgment. My attorney sent a final accounting, and I donated the interest amount to a nonprofit that taught financial literacy to young adults. Completing that circle felt right, transforming my pain into something that might prevent others from similar situations. The family I had lost still leaves an empty space in my life. There are moments when I miss the ideal of what we could have been, if not the reality of what we were. But the family I have built around me now, friends who became chosen brothers and sisters, Rebecca who became my wife, colleagues who became trusted allies, fills my life with authentic connection and genuine support. I no longer need to earn my place or accept betrayal as the price of belonging. I no longer measure my worth by others' estimation or suppress my needs to maintain peace. These are hard-won lessons, paid for at a high price, but their value exceeds anything that was taken from me. If you're watching this and struggling with similar family dynamics or financial betrayal, know this: standing up for yourself isn't selfish. Requiring accountability isn't cruel. And sometimes, the hardest boundaries create the strongest foundations for a better life. Have you ever had to choose between family peace and personal boundaries? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more perspectives on navigating complex family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that standing firm doesn't make them the villain in their own story. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be a supporting character in someone else's drama.